Top stories in this week's edition of the WINN Weekender. The merits of the PEP program vigorously debated. Prime Minister Denzel Douglas pumps up talk on boundary changes. And 2 prominent Caribbean stalwarts have died. Welcome to another edition of the WINN Weekender, a comprehensive recap of some of the major stories making the news this past week. I'm your presenter, Andre Huey. A vigorous debate ensued this past week on the People's Empowerment Program, PEP, from both sides of the political divide. Following the Prime Minister Dr. Denzel Douglas's defense of the PEP on Tuesday, Operation Rescue's Dwyer Astafan took aim at PEP on his own radio program. More from Ken Richards.
The former government minister says temporary work for the unemployed is not good enough.
I am glad the young people and the not so young people have temporary employment. I wish it were permanent. But Denzel Douglas has proven beyond the shadow of a doubt that he is either extremely incapable or absolutely unwilling to create the platform for sustainable economic development and empowerment of Kittitians and Nevisians and our brothers and sisters from the other islands who share with us in our national experience and movement forward. So as far as he's concerned, empowerment is a temporary work arrangement for our people while they remain, and as far as he's concerned, will continue that way as hewers of wood and carriers of water for the 21st century's version of colonialism.
Prime Minister Douglas has dismissed speculation that the PEP program is coming to an end.
The PEP is continuing. There's no reason to believe that the PEP is going to be halted.
However, he admits that the program is a costly affair.
The PEP, of course, is absorbing large sums of money every week, and we have been conscious of that.
There are reports of the program being abused. The Prime Minister said on his Ask the Prime Minister radio program that he is aware of that concern. However, Operation Rescue's Astafan alleges that the government itself is abusing the program by using it to inflate the country's employment figures. So what does the man and woman on the street think about the program?
Anything better than nothing. It's a good program.
Why is it a good program?
Keep the young people off the street and give some of them opportunity.
It's not sustainable. Well, it's a good program once they keep it up. Once they keep it going, it's a good program because it helps a lot of youth to get off the streets. They not idle hands cause the most trouble. So I mean, giving them something to do is something good. And I wish that they could keep it up.
Well, I think the PEP is a good program. I got friends and family, so no complaints.
Give the young people something to do for a while.
I think it's a good program so far.
But it's being criticized. Some people are saying the young people are not getting much money.
Well, I know we ain't getting enough money, but little one go full basket, so long, you know. It's a help state.
It's a help to the young generation to keep them off the road and to help them to build something for themselves.
Local economist Vernon Harris is not impressed with the International Monetary Fund's latest report painting a good picture of the St. Kitts Nevis economy. According to him, the IMF's assessment of the economy in its latest report is trying to please the Denzel Douglas-led administration. More in this Ken Richards report.
A strong critic of the Prime Minister and his administration, Harris describes the latest IMF report as a feel-good one, not being translated on the ground into improved production or an increase in employment opportunities, contributing to economic growth and development.
I'm not seeing it translated in productive areas. I'm not seeing growth in agriculture, and I'm seeing a growth in production. And the IMF, as usual, is concentrating on the areas in which they are benefiting. The loans are being repaid, so they feel happy about that. Is there any increase in employment? Is there an increase in agriculture? Is there an increase in fisheries? Are there any increase in the real outputs which will contribute to economic growth and development? There are none.
In the case of agriculture, the government reported last month that there has been a 15% increase in agricultural production. However, the concerns held by economist Harris about positive figures being quoted by the IMF not somehow reflecting the reality on the ground is also a concern for former government minister Dwyer Astafan, who has held a number of portfolios including tourism and national security. According to Astafan, the suffering of the people continues.
The bottom line here is, while all of this nice stuff is happening, we're having problems at our schools and our hospitals. While all of this, and I see an indication here that there was an increase in 10-point-something% in jobs. Well, we know that includes PEP jobs, which are temporary jobs. And it may well include some of these jobs held on the Southeast Peninsula and other places by people who are not even recorded in our social security system. So that's an exercise in artificiality to make the data look good, while the police need cars, the schools are having problems, the hospital, the health sector, a number of other things. So while one is always happy if an economy is going in the right direction, I am not persuaded that ours is.
However, as far as financial analyst Schneidman Warner, who spoke to WINN FM earlier, is concerned, the IMF report does indicate that the country has recorded a good economic performance. He says the report is encouraging for the Federation. Dwyer Astafan maintains, however, that good economic performance should be experienced by the people on the ground. I'm Ken Richards for the WINN Weekender.
Still to come on the WINN Weekender, Prime Minister Denzel Douglas pumps up talk on boundary changes, and the two prominent Caribbean stalwarts have passed away.
What's for lunch, Mom? I'm hungry.
Would you get out of the pot?
It's just what our home needed.
¿Puedes dejar de trastear? ¿A la izquierda? No. Mucho.
Honey, could you pass me the bread, please?
At Courts, every day we bring affordability, convenience, innovation, and style to over 1 million customers in 11 countries. From homes to communities, we are proud to make a difference in the lives of many across the region. Courts, bringing value home.
Welcome back. The constituency boundaries changes already approved by Parliament but put before the courts by the opposition are necessary to make all of the Federation's 11 constituencies as equal as possible. That's according to Prime Minister Dr. Denzel Douglas this past week. Ken Richards has more.
Opposition MPs who allege that the changes are intended to gerrymander the boundaries in favor of the governing Labour Party were successful several months ago in getting a court injunction to prevent the Governor-General from signing the proposed boundary changes into law. The matter is also the subject of a judicial review likely to be heard in late May. Prime Minister Douglas told listeners to his Ask the Prime Minister program Tuesday that the changes are needed to facilitate the holding of free and fair elections.
We began our work on this important undertaking way back in 2012. There was never any disagreement during the process. There were no boycotts by the opposition. There were no complaints about the process. Opposition and government representatives on the commission alike, they all agreed that these boundaries had to be changed and that they had to be changed now. Indeed, 4 of the 5 members of the Boundaries Commission, as everyone knows, signed the report. 80% support on any measure is an outstanding measure of its legitimacy anywhere in the world. And a 4 out of 5 on any measure anywhere is not only a compelling majority, but an overwhelming majority as well.
The opposition MPs who took the matter to court claim that the Constituency Boundaries Commission report was compiled with obvious bias, intending to adversely affect the members' chances of victory in the next general election. Prime Minister Douglas Tuesday accused the opposition of mischief-making on the boundary changes matter.
After all of that hard work and after an 80% vote, the opposition has since decided to throw a monkey wrench into the process. They have decided that despite the requirements of the Constitution, despite the urgings of the international observers, despite the 4 out of 5 sign-off for the report, despite the need of Kittians and Nevisians to have equal representation, it might be good for them to use boundary changes as a divisive political issue. And so that is what they have decided to do.
In response to the Prime Minister's statement on the matter Tuesday, the opposition is alleging that Dr. Douglas is attempting to massage the issue to his advantage.
Obviously, we have a genuine case. We have been before a judge. The judge has put in place an injunction preventing the Governor General from signing any proclamation. In a sense, what that means is that the judge would have taken a look at the arguments which we are making, and he has agreed that there's some case to be made. At the end of the day, it is up to the judge to then decide if the evidence which we have presented is enough for him to make a decision one way or the next. But the mere fact that we have been granted a hearing means that at least we have presented some evidence, which is what going to trial before the law and judge.
I'm Ken Richards for the WINN Weekender.
After months of service slowdown, Lime Internet customers are finally getting some relief. Tony Frederick has more.
Marketing manager Kevin Edwards said Thursday that work would begin in the most populated communities.
In most instances, because it is a congestion issue, it's going to be the areas with the greatest population density. The equipment has been on the ground. Our excellent technicians have been doing the relevant testing, and the rollout of the upgrades should start. I shouldn't even say should, will start come next week. It's going to looking at early next week, and we're going to be starting with the most affected areas first and then moving from there. So just asking you to be a little bit more patient for a couple more days, literally a couple more days. We're getting it done, like I said, literally.
Over the past few months, Lime customers have been experiencing the slowdowns that see page timeouts and even service dropouts during high traffic periods, particularly at evenings and on weekends.
Our technicians have already started doing the initial testing since Tuesday evening to make sure everything that needs to get done and in place will be ready. So they have to do that initial testing because we just can't, it's not just a plug-in, and that's the end of that. You have to properly configure everything to work, especially with the kind of upgrades that we're going to be doing, that it doesn't affect people's present hardware, meaning their modems, that compatibility issue. So that is what we're actually doing right now, compatibility testing. Once that is completed, the rollout is going to go full stream. What we're doing right now, we want to correct the current issue. The traffic, the congestion, we want to correct that issue first with the eventual plan to do a full network-wide upgrade to increase our connectivity speed. So it's going to be a phased approach, fix the current problem, make sure it's working properly, then go into the full upgrade where we will be increasing our internet speeds.
Mr. Edwards says once work begins next week, internet customers will be able to see a difference in service within days. Lime General Manager David Lake said last month that customers will be compensated for the issues. He revealed at that time that the company was pumping some $1 million into the immediate upgrades.
2 Caribbean stalwarts died this past week. Former Trinidad and Tobago President A.N.R. Robinson and Caribbean academic Norman Gervin. Mr. Robinson died Wednesday at the age of 87 after a prolonged illness. He is the only man with the distinction of having been Prime Minister and later President of his country. Many in Trinidad and Tobago regard him as a patriot because of his actions during the 1990 attempted coup by the Jamaat al-Muslimin group, according to veteran broadcaster Tony Frazier. However, while many are mourning the loss of the former head of state, former Prime Minister Bassio Pandey continues to have harsh words for Mr. Robinson. The continuing animosity rests with an election result tie of 18-18 and the post-election decision that President Arthur Robinson made that affected Pandey's then UNC in a negative way. However, Mr. Pandey concedes that A.N.R. Robinson made some very significant contributions, including having been instrumental in the establishment of the International Criminal Court. Caribbean academic Norman Gervin also passed away on Wednesday. The Trinidad-based Gervin had up until late last year been one of the very vocal regional voices condemning the Dominican Republic's constitutional ruling that made tens of thousands of mainly people of Haitian descent stateless. The prominent Caribbean academic was 72. The Jamaican-born Gervin, who earlier this year suffered a serious fall while in Dominica, died in Cuba. He was a professor emeritus of the University of the West Indies. He was also a professional research fellow at the Graduate Institute of the International Relations of the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine, Trinidad and Tobago. Professor Gervin was a former Secretary General of the Association of Caribbean States, Professor of Development Studies and Director of the Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies at the University of the West Indies, and head of the National Planning Agency of the Government of Jamaica. To end the WINN Weekender this week, a look at some of the headlines. Prime Minister Dr. Denzil Douglas pumps up talk on boundary changes, and a vigorous debate ensued this past week on the People's Empowerment Program PEP from both sides of the political divide. This has been the WINN Weekender. On behalf of the WINN TV News team, I'm Andre Huey. Thank you for watching.